Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be the Offlane tier list for patch 7.32b, and just like I said in the other videos, they might release a C patch in the next week or so, but the last chance qualifier is in 3 weeks, so if they don't release it this week, they probably won't release it, and even if they do, it'll probably only just be some small changes, some small nerfs to really strong heroes, and I don't think it'll change the meta all that much. So regardless, let's just jump into it, and before we do, I just always like to say I get my data from Dota 2 Pro Tracker, from the Trends tab here, or like Dota Buff, as well as the pro games, so like the TI qualifiers that just ended in all the regions. I look at all that. I put all that together, and then I get my opinion in there as well to just make the list. So without further ado, let's just jump into it and go to S tier. So S tier, the first hero is Lycan. So if you noticed, it's Lycan and Beastmaster, the first two heroes. This is just like, this is a typical thing. Is it a zoo patch or not? And it just turns out it's a zoo patch. It's like been a zoo patch almost every patch since they introduced this new Helm of the Overlord. Now you can get this ancient camp, this ancient creep, and it just feels like this is always going to be viable until they nerf it into the ground. They also changed the way lifesteal works now with all of those lifesteal items, which makes these heroes even better because now they're all about like fighting. They never really had problems lifestealing on creeps. Like that wasn't what they cared about, and that's what they nerfed, and they made it better in fighting situations to lifesteal off of heroes, which is what makes these heroes even better. So Lycan does Lycan things, small buffs and changes to the lifesteal just make this hero really strong. Same thing with Beastmaster. Exact same thing. You have all these summons, these minions. You obviously have the axes build. You can potentially go if, you know, they can easily kill your boar. So this hero is just so good. Like they pressure the map like in that early mid-game portion, and if they take your tower early, it can feel so hard to like play against a Beastmaster or Lycan. They're just running down your supports. They're just taking all your towers. Now, obviously, in lower MMRs, like in these pubs, it's not going to be as good as in higher MMRs where people like the pace is much higher. People know how to, you know, strangle the map and restrict the map for the enemy. So keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're not doing that with the hero, if everybody's so passive and just farming jungle, it's just not going to feel as good. But obviously, if you're picking this hero, it's going to, or Lycan or Beastmaster, you're going to be the one that hopefully sets the pace and like communicates to your team, hey, let's pressure the map, let's get into the jungle, let's fight somebody, you know, they can't deal with me, it's 15 minutes, I have my Helm of the Overlord, I have all this stuff, like we're just going to run them down, that kind of stuff. You just really need to make sure you're playing with pace with these heroes. And then we have Enigma. So Enigma has just been super relevant as offlane and sometimes as forward position. Even at the major, it was really good. Then they kind of changed it. They nerfed it a little bit, at least they tried to. And then they actually changed its shard, and they changed the ags in the shard. And I think that actually made it even more viable in some ways. It's the same hero as it always has been. It's, I mean, the black hole bot that just you can never count out late game, but now, and increasingly, they're giving it more ways to play in terms of like buying the shard and pressuring the map with Eidolon. So if you were watching the qualifiers for TI, you would see this hero go offlane and just get the shard, and like you would have these Eidolons just pressuring towers constantly, man. Like they're so good at pressuring towers with these Eidolons, especially once you get the shard. They can be so annoying to deal with this hero. And now you have this hero that's farming, generally doing really well in lane by denying range creeps, pressuring towers with the Eidolons without, you know, putting its hero at risk. And now you have these late game black holes you can never count out. Like I think they need to do something to this hero, like nerf it really hard or something like that. Like make black hole like a second, like shorter, or make the cooldown like 2 minutes long, like a minute longer, 2 minutes longer, or something like that to like really nerf the hero, because it just seems super viable. So look for Enigma to be one of the best heroes in the patch and in TI. Next, we have Visage. So obviously you have to be a Visage player. You have to be like a Visage specialist, know what you're doing. But right now, in the qualifiers especially, we see if there are Visage players on the teams playing, like they are just crushing games. They are getting this hero first banned because it is so strong. It just does typical Visage things, but it's very, very hard to deal with the pace of this hero and how it works. You obviously have to be a Visage player. I'm not going to say, obviously, learn Visage or you're going to be good at it in pubs. But if you know how to play it, or if you want to play it, if you're a micro player, this hero can be very, very strong right now. But I don't really have too much to say. I'm not a Visage player. And then lastly, actually for S tier, this might surprise some people, and it goes against a little bit of the statistics. But if you have seen some pubs, if you know what's going on in pubs, this hero is actually completely freaking broken. I just think people haven't realized fully how broken this hero is, dude. This hero is insane. With the way they changed the decay, I don't know all the little details or everything that they changed. Obviously, you can read it there. You can look at the patch. But the decay feels insane. You're basically getting the HP and, like, not losing it. It does way more damage than it did before. Like, before it did damage, but then it felt like you couldn't really farm with it. Now you're like, this dude's, like, getting last hits. Like, you can, like, decay a range creep and just, like, at half HP and you just get the last hit. Like, it's ridiculous what this hero does with this ability. It feels so hard to lane against as an offlaner. And then obviously, once he gets some levels, he's decaying you have no HP, he's pressuring the tower, he just clicks his ultimate, clicks Tomb, like, you just can't fight the guy. It's impossible. The hero just has insane HP, does ridiculous damage, is slowing you. I think this hero is completely broken. I will be extremely surprised if this hero is not one of the top contested, like, picked banned heroes in TI, because it can play offlane, it can play support, it's broken, like, in so many different ways. I mean, there's always been times where Undying has been viable, and I think now is one of those times. And I would say if you're playing offlane, if you like to play offlane, even if you play support, look to try to learn this hero or see how this hero is broken, because the new decay, the way they changed it, it just feels like you can never fight into the hero. You just never fight into the hero. Now, obviously, it's cooldown dependent, but as long as you don't just, like, run in when you don't have cooldowns, like, you're going to crush lanes, you're going to crush games with that hero. So that's S tier. Next, we're going to move on to A tier. So A tier, we have Death Prophet. I already talked about Death Prophet in my mid video. It's the same kind of thing. They changed the Spirit Siphon to not be percentage and just to be flat damage. I thought that was a pretty big nerf, but I just didn't realize that this means that early game you can lifesteal way more off of creeps and way more off of low HP supports, and you can do insane damage early. So now you just snowball so insanely hard. I mean, you kind of already did that before, but Spirit Siphon is literally the most broken spell in Dota. I'm just going to say that. It's maybe Decay is, honestly, but I think Spirit Siphon is right now, like, far and away the most broken spell in Dota. It's absolutely ridiculous. This hero can't die. You just can't kill the hero. I played a lane. I was like Slark and some other hero, AA or something like that, against the DP, and there was a Tusk in the lane. The Tusk literally just, I was griefing, I guess, and left the lane at like 2 minutes, and so it was like a 2v1. Dude, the DP would Spirit Siphon one of us and just gain, like, we couldn't kill the hero. Now, I killed him a couple times, but one time we died, I think, because, like, the Tusk did eventually come back, like, we were kind of close to the tower. But anyway, the story is just that, like, we would jump in on the hero. At any other hero, we would just melt the hero. It was a 2v1. It was like there was no shot. They shouldn't have ever been able to survive. I probably would get like 15 stacks on the hero with the Slark, because I would have to hit him like 15 times before he freaking died, because he's just, like, Spirit Siphoning me and just refusing to go down. It's absolutely insane what this hero can do. So just keep that in mind. Pretty broken hero right now. Pretty good. So if they release a C patch, look for that Spirit Siphon to be nerfed. Next, we have Necro. I think Necro's good as an offlane. I mean, the win rate just says this hero's pretty good. I like the hero. I like to play the hero. I like when the hero's good, but I don't believe in the hero necessarily as much as maybe some people do, or maybe as the stats do. I mean, the stats say it's really good offlane, so I think it just dominates from the offlane. I still think we see these lane-dominating ranged offlaners like Death Prophet, like Necro. I mean, this isn't a ranged hero, but these kind of lane-dominating heroes that really pressure the carry are really good right now. Especially if they're ranged and they can, like, deal with these Ursas, these Slarks, these Faceless Voids, and, like, kick them out of lane. It can be very, very beneficial. And that's kind of the same thing with Vipers. Like, if you're able to kick the carry out of lane, because these kinds of carries don't really love to go farm jungle. They like to stick in their lane, rotate between the big and the small camp, push in the wave. If you can kick them out, get their tower early, and not let them lane, like, it can feel really bad for them and the game in general, because it just closes and restricts the map on them super hard. So that's what I think all these heroes kind of do. That's kind of similar to Batrider. Batrider's really good mid. I think it's primarily a mid, but you can still play it from the off lane. I think the fact that it is so viable from the offlane just kind of proves how good the hero is, because I think the hero's always been pretty good from mid for the last year or so, but at times, even when it's a really good mid, it hasn't been that great offlane. But now it is still good offlane, so it's good mid, it's good offlane, very viable. And again, if you can kick people out of their lane, and you're also doing damage with your sticky napalm, which is crazy. If you're kicking the carries out of lane early, it can be very, very good in general as a good hero. Now, obviously, Slark does counter it, but still. As long as you're not playing into Slark, you should be pretty good. So that is A tier. Next, we're going to B tier. These are all pretty viable heroes right now. Just you can pick them kind of in any game, and they'll be okay. They're not going to be the best broken hero, but they're just generally decent overall off-laners. We have Slardar, good for all the reasons Slardar is. They kind of have been slowly giving this hero buffs with like the puddle that it creates now around his stun, with the little puddle that people make when you ult them. Like all that kind of stuff is just slowly increasing this hero's viability. And if you are able to get your items, you can just do insane damage. You take Roche really quick. There's a lot of really good things about this hero. I think it's just a pretty good stable offlaner, especially in pubs. Night Stalker, a similar kind of thing. I think the lower MMR you go, the better this hero is. This hero feels super broken. I think at low MMRs, it just dominates games. Like you just run on the supports, you kill them. You even counter a lot. Like Slark, you really counter Slark if you're able to jump on top of him and silence him if he doesn't have BKB. This hero can be really good if you know how to play him. He just does all the similar typical Night Stalker things, and I don't think he's been changed too much or nerfed too much recently to make him not viable. Next, we have Dawnbreaker and Marcy. Both of these heroes, the new heroes, I kind of always put them together because they're kind of on the same track. They're obviously not the same hero, but they have like similar tracks. They're just like both the new heroes that are they were really broken at one point. They play all the positions, and now they're slowly getting nerfed. They're not as viable, but they're still really, really good. So that's Dawnbreaker, that's Marcy. Nothing crazy different about them, just not as good as they once were, but still pretty viable from the offlane. Next, we have Pango. Good for Pango reasons. Honestly, there's nothing crazy new about this hero. I will say they did change some of the ways the hero... I feel like they nerfed the hero in some ways with his I forget the name of the spell. Let's just click him and see what it is. Yeah, the shield crash. The duration of shield crash is only 5 seconds now, so they definitely nerfed that. But they buffed him in other ways that I think generally helps him overall. So obviously the nerf to that makes you not have these situations where you're completely unkillable, but that like only happened in rare circumstances. So now I think, and the hero's always been kind of like borderline relevant, pickable in pros. So if you're a good Pango player, he's not as great in the offlane because he doesn't dominate the lane, so you do have to be wary of that. You're not like a lane dominator. You're probably going to lose the lane, to be honest, but it's just that like once you get your 6, once you get your ultimate, you can kill people super easily. You really scale well into the late game. Next, we have Tusk. I think the big thing about Tusk, I think he's really viable right now as a 4 position as a support, but he's also pretty good from the offlane because you can do insane damage. You can really be a very, very good laner if you have the right support with you, and then you also can get this Ags build with the kick that it's kind of like Pudge Hook, but just almost like more viable, or like back when in TI 10 with the Magnus shard. It's like a similar kind of thing. You blink in, you kick somebody back, you snowball on top of them like right after you kick them. It's game winning to have that in the offlane. And then you do insane damage too as well with this hero. It's just a very good hero for those reasons, I believe. Next, we have Venno. I'm not a huge fan of Venno overall, but this hero can be pretty annoying to deal with. I think he just does Venno things, but the biggest thing to this hero is they changed the, I think it was the shard now, that, like, Slark is good against it, obviously, because you can still use your Q to dispel it, but basically, and you dispel the stun too, but basically now when you use your shard on somebody, it's like a new ability, and they dispel it if they do, or once it ends, they get stunned, and that goes through BKB. I think it goes through Manta as well, so that's really, really good. I think that's the biggest thing that makes this hero more viable. It still does normal Venomancer things, but other than that, pretty good. Centaur, they've recently been buffing Centaur, so Centaur has like 1,564 billion HP regen, level 1, so like you just can't die. The biggest problem with Centaur is, yes, you have insane regen, yes, you're good in lane, it's very hard to kill you, yes, you can get your farm, you're super tanky, like nobody wants to deal with you, but the big problem with Centaur is nobody wants to deal with you, you're tanky, but no one really has to deal with you. Like your blink stun is probably one of the worst in the game because of the animation. It's pretty bad like Slardar's is, but Slardar has other tools. So you're kind of just like this ult bot, and then you like click your return on somebody. As long as people just ignore you and don't damage you, it can be very annoying. Now, obviously, the Ags kind of changes that some ways, but I think that's a little more of a meme. We'll see if it's actually viable. But overall, this hero's just pretty stable, pretty good. If you can end up like running around the fight and getting a lot of shard returns off, or double edges, sorry. I meant double edge when I said it before. If you get a lot of double edges off and get a lot of damage and a lot of strength, you can potentially be a very powerful hero. It's just that a lot of times you can just be ignored and then they can kill you last. Pudge, pretty good as an offlaner, I think. Carry is the main way this hero is played, but I think offlane is the next best position for the hero. I think the big problem is if they can push you out of lane, if they can kick you out of lane, if they can dominate the lane against you because you're really kind of weaker early, it can be very, very bad to play this hero because you almost like turn to a 4-position support and you don't get your items. It can feel super bad. But if you're able to play decently in the lane with a good support that can back you up and they can't kick you out and you can get your farm, you can basically be like that carry from the offlane, like the same way that he plays carry. It's just that now you might have a a real carry to back yourself up, to rely on, and now you can play the same way with the Ags going in, getting super tanky and annoying in the same kind of manner. Just all about that early game. Can you survive the early game and get the same kind of farm as you would on a carry from the offlane? If you could do that, you can be very effective. Primal Beast, kind of back in the meta a little bit. Like I said in the mid video, not like broken like he was before, but still pretty viable. Still pretty good. I think I always say the biggest nerf to him, in my opinion, is the fact that you can hear his charge from fog. That hasn't changed at all. So he's not like as insane as he once was, but still pretty good. I think people like not overvalued, but overestimated the nerfs before. I think they did nerf him, but I don't think it was as bad as some people thought. I think people just stopped playing him overall. And now he's back with some buffs, and I think he's still a little bit viable. He's just a generally decent hero. So that is B tier. Next, we're going to look at C tier here. So C tier has some kind of just generally stable, normal offlaners. We have Axe. I think Axe is on the rise, but just, with his, you can get games. If you can get all these kills with your ultimate, these Culling Blades, like you can just snowball games out of control. It feels absolutely insane what this hero can do with Culling Blade, with high armor. Like then you eventually feel unkillable. And that's the main way that Axe is good, but Axe can still feel bad in some other games. Some other times he just feels good against some magic damage, if you can't lane as well. So he can be pretty weak early on, and that can feel bad too. But if you're able to get your items, if you're able to get those ults off and get a lot of stacks, you can be really, really viable. Look for Clockwork to be on the upswing with the new Ags. I see it being pretty good in some games, but I don't see it all that often. And the win rate says it's okay, but it's just not getting picked a ton. I think it's still like a hidden gem. So look out for the Clockwork offlane, especially with the Ags. I think it could potentially be broken, so look out for that. Bloodseeker, doing Bloodseeker things, just kind of down here, still viable, but just more of like a carry offlane. I think he's actually one of the better carry offlanes, to be honest, because a lot of the other ones got nerfed. But otherwise, he's just kind of the same thing. Legion Commander, I think Legion Commander is kind of on the upswing. Before Legion Commander, when she was good, it was because she was just like a press the attack bot because of the free BKB and the save. And that's kind of how she worked. She just like stunned somebody with her duel, and she didn't really rely on damage. And then she just was like a purge bot and a BKB bot. And now I think they're kind of changing that to make the hero a little bit more viable as an actual kind of like carry from the off lane, but still stunning people. And I think if you are good with her and you know how to play her, you can still dominate lanes. You can snowball really hard on this hero. Like I've seen, they even played mid sometimes, and it actually can be really effective. Nature's Prophet, I'd probably play this hero more as an off lane now than a carry. But just does Nature's Prophet things. The change to the shard just makes it not as viable as I think as it once was. Vengeful Spirit, probably more support than an offlane, but if you do play this hero at all, you want to get your Ags timing, so if you can do it from the offlane and you don't have like the big problem with this hero is all about control. It doesn't really give damage like itself, so if you have damage dealers from the mid and the carry position and you don't really need to worry about that and you just want control and stuns and to be annoying in fights, that's what Venge does. So but if you pick a Venge and you don't have too much control or you don't have too much damage already, you can really run into damage problems. Bounty Hunter is all about it's like an all or nothing hero. If you're able to get your Ags, if you're able to run in, if you're able to click people down and snowball and get all those track kills, you can be really good. If you can't lane, if you don't get your Ags quick, if you're not able to fight, this hero feels like a third support and you just lose the game. That's the story of Bounty Hunter. Dragon Knight, I think, is an okay offlane of all positions. Like that's why I put him in C tier, but he still feels really bad. I just don't think he's been viable ever since they nerfed the shard. Kunkka, again, kind of, I think still viable as an offlane now because you really as an offlaner are all focused on, I mean, you can pressure the lane pretty well, but you're focused on ganking and stuff. I just don't think it's the best, but at least it's not like focused 100% on farming like it is from the mid, which I think is nerfed a lot from the hero, but I think it's okay. It's just not the best. And then Brewmaster I'm putting up here because like I think the new Ags is okay. It's just not great. I think the hero is generally pretty good, but it's definitely not nearly as good as it was last patch. I don't know what I had it in the last tier list, but it was on the rise. At the end of that patch, it was probably A, potentially even S tier with that double ultimate build and then the quadruple ultimate build with the Ags refresher. But then they obviously took that away, so now I think it's okay. I think it just needs a little bit of a small buff to the Ags, and then this hero can be more viable. So that's C tier. And then next we have D tier. So a lot of D tier is basically either, old-timey, the typical off lanes that just have been nerfed a lot and haven't been relevant recently. Maybe it'll be relevant in TI because of how they will play, but just not super relevant now. Or carry off laners specifically that ATF plays and have been nerfed into oblivion. So Razor nerfed into oblivion because it's been so popular for so long, just nerfed a lot not really good anymore as carry from the offlane. Still viable, okay, you can still pick it, but just not as good. Bristleback, S tier, carry last patch, still wasn't great as an offlane, and now since they got nerfed overall, even from the carry, it's just really not a good offlaner. Kind of a carry from the offlane again, and just not really. This hero is almost like more of a carry now than an offlaner. CK, again, nerfed a lot since it was like super strong carry from the offlane, just not very viable. They changed Timbersaw a lot now with the passive, and the passive feels absolutely terrible. Just terrible now. They've been nerfing this hero a lot, and I think this change to the passive where you need to get like 40 right clicks or whatever it is on you, or something like that, like 40 stacks or something, it just feels like it's dead. Honestly, it's just dead, I think. I think you won't see this hero at all again until they buff it a lot or they change that passive back. Mars, one of these weird heroes, and I think Tidehunter is kind of the same thing, where these heroes almost always seem viable in pro games, but the win rates on these heroes are completely dog shit. They're all about playing around your team and your ultimate and getting pickoffs, and if you can't do that, it's just not good. And they've just been consistently nerfed, especially Mars, consistently nerfed because he's been good for so long. They just keep nerfing him. I still think you can still actually play this hero and have success, but just based on the win rate and based on how many nerfs he's gotten, I'm putting him down here. Sand King, Doom, kind of a similar situation to these two heroes. Sand King, classic one, but just nerfed a lot, just isn't super viable right now. It just feels like this hero's either S or like D tier. Doom, I think the new Doom where you can cast it on yourself with the Ags is actually really good, but haven't seen it work too much. I think it's being underestimated, potentially, but it's still just, based on the win rates and based on how it feels, it feels super greedy. Like, maybe we'll see in TI, we'll see if people want to go greedy, maybe even 4th position, but right now, off lane, it just feels like you get kicked out of lane, you don't do much, you don't dominate the lane, you're just kind of this farming hero. It feels really weird. Spirit Breaker, not really an off lane, more of a 4th position, not the best off laner right now. I don't think it's been off lane viable for a long time, ever since they nerfed it when it was like broken. Underlord, they've been changing this hero. I think this is more of like, I actually think Underlord, I could put it next to Tidehunter because it's very similar in the sense that you're all about your ultimate, like playing around your ultimate. You're all about like, I mean, I think you can be viable, you just have to have good team coordination. It's not really a pub hero. Magnus, more of like a farming hero, and obviously that's really not the meta right now. And then I think you could still be good with your like ultimate and your skewer and obviously your shard. It's still like viable, but it's just really not that great. And you also don't really love like even buffing up your allies to farm, because like the good carries are not the ones that want to get like empowered necessarily. I mean, it's not that they hate it, but it's just not like, you don't want this passive farm centric offlaner that doesn't do much in the lane. Like, you just don't want that. And then F tier, finally, we have Darkseer. I hate this hero. Don't play this hero. Like, you're not allowed to play this hero if you're below 6k MMR. You're just not allowed. It's just off limits. Just delete it from the thing, because from the list, like if you're below like 6k, maybe even 7k, 9k, like just delete the hero. Like, don't play it ever, because it gives the enemy a free lane, free game. And like, I always make my rant on Darkseer, but basically you just like push the wave and you just ion shell the wave. You're not playing Dota. And yes, later on when you get your items, you can be very effective, but like, you're not going to do that, because you're just not going to, it's not going to happen. Your team is not going to play around the Darkseer timing. You're giving the enemy carry a literal free farm game, and it's just not good. Just don't play it unless you're high MMR. Alchemist, not an Alchemist patch, and especially offlane, no, did not pick this hero. OD, not really an offlaner. I mean, I think you can get away with it actually, but I'm just putting an F tier to tell you don't pick that. And also don't pick Broodmother offlane. Just don't do it. It's not. It has like a 30% win rate in offlane and high level MMR pubs. I just don't think it's good overall, and just don't pick an offlane. So that is my offlane tier list for patch 7.32. 7.32D, I believe, or B. No, B. Yep, it's B. As always, guys, if you liked it, like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Go to my Patreon if you want to support me and see more of these videos into the future, or if you want to get coaching, I offer coaching there as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.